Hey there, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. So today I'm just doing some dig a hole here. Found some diamonds here. In my last video, I was in an area that had a lot of lava, and it's kind of interesting because I fell in the lava again and died. Of course, that's how it always works with me. But the thing was, I went back to where I was, and it was a long way. I mean, it was pretty far away. But the thing is, I couldn't seem to find where I was at. And then what was interesting is I found like all my stuff, not all my stuff, like a bunch of stuff on the ground where, you pick up all your stuff when you die. But it was in a different spot. And so I don't really know what's going on. So I think I may have lost that section of the world. I think what happens with this version of the game is that like when the worlds get really big in terms of like you do a lot of exploring, it has to create the world and it gets large. It just seems to lose lose stuff. It's rather amazing. It just loses stuff. So yeah, that's how it goes. So let's see what I'm gonna do here. See if I can find some more diamonds. Well, I just found some diamonds, so that's not going to be good. But yeah, that's what's going on. Digging a hole, down in a hole, down in a hole, da-na-na, whatever that song is by whatever that guy is. Don't know. Good song, I think. But yeah, let's see. So wait. I want to make sure I'm not twisting in circles. So wait, I'm going this direction. Do left turn, straight. Okay, good. We'll do that. Yeah, I lost all my diamond stuff. I don't have, well, no, I have a diamond sword, but I don't have a diamond pickaxe. What's going on here? Yeah, so the election looks like it's been called for Biden. So congratulations to all the Biden people out there. Hopefully, pulling for him. Hopefully everything goes okay. So, it's good. Hopefully all the final loose ends will get tied up and we can move on with our lives. Basically, it's kind of funny because like I was saying in my other video, it's like, if you look at it, I think people overplay like how much effect like politics has on your life. It shouldn't really have as large an effect as people think it is. I think it's more perception than reality. Like I was saying in my other video, I'm like, hey, what happens with your life, whether you're happy, successful, or sad, or whatever's going on with your life, I mean, it has very little to do with politics. At the end of the day, it's the decisions that you make that matter. That's just what it is. Because you, on a daily basis, average person, you get up, you have maybe sleep 8 hours a night, and then you have 16 hours a day. And then it's kind of funny because, I've always worked as an engineer. And I've always, kind of just worked for a company, never did contracting. But lately I'm doing contracting. So what's kind of interesting about that is like, you have to, when you're contracting, like you have to really pay attention to your hours. Like I can't work extra hours and not charge the contracting company. And of course, I need to make sure that the hours that I'm charging the company. So when I'm saying I'm working, I need to be really working, focused working. And I'm not saying that at another employer that I'm not saying that I didn't work, I did. But what I would tend to do is very often I would not work as efficiently and not focus as much. And then I would put in more hours, and maybe in reality, it's sort of FaceTime, putting in a lot of FaceTime. So that concept is like, in work environments, sometimes you have people that put in a lot of FaceTime. So they're always there, they're always at work, looks like they're really hard workers and stuff like that. And, but the other thing is like, well, sure, in some of the cases that is the case. But in other cases, it's not. It's like people just put in a lot of FaceTime. It looks like they're there. It looks like they're doing a lot of work. But then the question is, are they getting anything accomplished. So kind of the field that I work in is that you know, it's engineering and it's electronics, and it has to do with basically ASICs and chips. And these are, you know, advanced electronics. And what happens is there's a lot of work that has to be done to get these chips out. And the reality is, like, you could spend a lot of time working on stuff that doesn't actually advance the project to getting it done. So basically, you know, like in engineering, the thing is, like, the cycles could be a year, 2 years, where you're working on something and you're working on it for a year, year and a half before it actually goes out to becoming an actual product. So you have this long lead time. And in that process of this long lead time, you know, you can waste a lot of time. So it's just been interesting being a contractor for the first time in my career, where it's like really have to focus on, when I'm on the clock, I write it down and I'm focused, like, okay, really don't get distracted by anything. Just focus on actually doing the work that you need to do. And then the other thing is, like, I only have limited hours, so I have to kind of work more effectively. So basically in the past, what I could do is I could say, hey, I could get distracted on something. So let's say, because like an environmental work is kind of like hardware, but it's, you know, you write a lot of software basically to make hardware. That's kind of what it is. So it's an environment where you look at things and you can, like, create scripts, or you can do this or do that. You know, there's a lot of areas where you can go spend a lot of time looking into something. And then at the end of it, it's like, well, that's not the right direction, or that's not going to help. And you can just kind of go in that direction. So, you know, what I have to be really clear on is, like, okay, I have to kind of look ahead and be like, okay, do I want to go down that path? Do I want to spend my time on that? Is that going to be productive or not? You kind of have to look more carefully, because I genuinely feel like I'm, you know, charging people by the hour, you know, to pay me. And with that, there's a responsibility to make sure that you're giving them that hour of work. And additionally, you know, a very experienced person. So you want to be giving them work that's accomplishing something. So you have to have tangible goals, you know, and you have to get things done. They have things that need to get done. There's like thousands of steps in the process, right? So basically it's like you're looking at something, and to get to the next step, that would lead to, you know, sending an actual product to manufacturing. You know, the steps, whatever, there's 10,000 steps or whatever it is. And you got to have the discipline to, you know, to make progress. Oh, I'm working on step, you know, and the steps aren't always known. You kind of like, it's kind of always changing, but basically you have to kind of have the discipline to just, you know, keep focused on that. So it's actually been really good from a different perspective for me, because what I can do is I'm kind of like, okay, when I get on the clock, just really focus on work. And actually, you know, honestly, I found that I'm able to get a lot more done in a lot less time. And so it's actually very productive. Very, very productive. So that's kind of good. And so in the future, my assumption will be that I will go back to just being an employee at a company and get out of the contracting. I suspect that will be the case. And if I do that, you know, I think I will have learned to be definitely more effective with my time, which I think can be a benefit overall. So it's kind of interesting, because so, you know, you go back to like, okay, if you sleep 8 hours a day and you have 16 hours a day left, did I do the math right? Yeah, I think so. You know, it's what you do with that time, and very little, I mean, like, of what the government's doing is really impacting that. It really is. I mean, you have to think about it. The thing I think that scares people, a lot of people, especially younger people, is like, well, it's, you know, it's sort of like you have to take responsibility for it. So if you're sitting there and you're struggling, and I'm talking more at like young adults, and I'm not talking about, you know, I understand that there's people living in real poverty, like in really bad situations, and I'm not in any way belittling that, and I'm not saying that I know what that feels like, but there's a lot of people that are, let's just say there's a lot of people from middle class families that have the resources, and like, and that are actually, maybe it seems almost like paralyzed by this whole notion that, you know, oh, you know, because if this person gets elected or that person gets elected, they're going to, you know, cause this harm to me, and everything's going to hell in a handbasket. And then they waste all their time focused on that instead of focusing on, well, gee, what did I do today? Did I learn something? Did I do something to improve my life? You know, and then once again, you know, so that's the thing. So the reality is, like, the perception is, and they would like you to perceive that, you know, if you look at it from a politician point of view, it's like, well, what is a great argument for a politician? The argument is that, hey, you know, if I can convince people that they need to vote for me, because if they don't, they're screwed, you know, then that's what they're going to do, right? And it's not, and it's actually not, and I would say this, it's not nefarious, it's not necessarily nefarious or evil. It's just sort of the way it is, because why? Because that's the way they think. And many people, many politicians are actually, I would say, they genuinely believe it. Like, they want to help. So you have this issue of intentions, right? So, you know, does the politician have good intentions or bad intentions? And so, for example, if a politician is like, hey, you know, I want to promise to spend a whole bunch of money on some program, and I believe this program is going to help people, you know, it's like, okay, fine. And they may believe that, but then the consequence of that program could actually have an opposite effect. And this is one of these problems that we have, because many of the politicians have very little experience, especially the younger ones. You know, it's like, certainly it's great that they have young people in politics, and that's great. And, you know, bringing the energy to it is certainly a good thing. But the problem is experience. You know, the problem is, like, it's interesting. Like, you have a lot of people that, you know, did they ever even work? And did they ever even understand, like, hey, when you work, you know, you get a paycheck. I mean, I remember, like, those first paychecks you get. I was working in, like, a supermarket, and it's like, gee, man, you just, you work and you're like, oh my gosh, well, where's all this money going? Because you're like, you do the math and you're like, hey, I'm making $5 an hour, and I work 10 hours, I should get $50. And then you're like, well, I get 38. Like, what the heck happened? You know, and then you look and it's all the taxes, the payroll taxes, all that stuff. And, you know, once again, I'm not saying that that's necessarily wrong, but you don't understand it. You know, it's like, if you never had that opportunity to work for a paycheck, then you know, you don't know anything about it. So then, of course, everything's for free. So you would say, hey, you know, we need program X, so therefore, you know, we're just going to spend the money and we're just going to raise the taxes to do it. And that's like, okay, maybe it is, maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't. But, you know, if you have people making the decisions that never worked for a paycheck before and never understood that, and then, you know, it's interesting, this kind of cuts, like, so that would be like maybe a right-leaning person complaining about someone on the left. But another way would be like, let's take a person that was well off and they never really worked for anyone either. So let's say you're like, your family was a billionaire and you're doing whatever. And then, you know, you have this other side of the coin where it's like, well, you know what? They've never worked for a paycheck either. Now, maybe they did some investing or whatever, but at the end of the day, you know, they have no concept of that either. So they can also have the same issue where, like, oh, I want to do this and I want to do that. And, so they don't understand, you know, the consequences of increasing taxes in that way, but they also don't understand in a different way, you know, how hard it is to work for a paycheck, right? They may not know that. They may be like, well, you know, okay, you're the son of a billionaire. Did you ever like really work? Like have to go work? Did you ever like have to go do like heavy, hard labor? Do you understand like how hard it can be, you know, to go work like a 10-hour shift, jackhammering or hanging sheetrock, you know? It's like, it can get really tired. I remember I worked with my dad and you would think, well, working for your dad, well, that should be easy. Well, sure, sometimes it was easy, but my dad pretty much worked us pretty hard. I was I was the jackhammer guy. So like it was this old mill building, and it had basically, I looked it up recently, built back in the 1800s and stuff. And it's rather incredible because, I mean, it's amazing. This thing was like the first parts of this paper mill in Connecticut were built like before the Civil War. It's like, you're kidding me how old it is. But basically, I was working and walking around this place, and trust me, parts of it haven't been remodeled that much. They're still like, oh yeah, that's the original bricks from before the Civil War. You're like crazy. But yeah, so I would be like the hard labor guy. So, I remember like one time I was jackhammering. So I had the jackhammer. Basically, there's like a 13-foot wall. 13-foot wall. There was concrete on one side of it, and Dad hires this guy to with a diamond blade saw to cut through the concrete. Okay, that's fine. They cut it up into like 3 by 4 foot blocks, but then the other side is like 10 to 15 feet of solid brick, and it's like, okay, we have to jackhammer through it. So I remember like it like took a week to do this, and it would like you get up 5 a.m. You leave the house in the car with like 5 or 6 other smelly people, trust me, smelly people in a station wagon. And you go and you drive about 45 minutes an hour. Then you go to work. So like, okay, you go there, you fire up this jackhammer, and you jackhammer all the way to lunch. So you put in like, oh, it's 12 o'clock, you're like, you've already like worked 5 hours of jackhammering. And, you have this mask on it. It's this brick dust from, oh my gosh, who knows where. I mean, this stuff is like brick that's probably from the original stuff, pre-Civil War brick that you're jackhammering. Like, I hope it doesn't have asbestos. Like, who knows? You don't know. And the mask I'm wearing is like, one of those crappy little, it's like probably an N95 mask, but with the crappy fixing where, it doesn't really seal very well. And so, I remember like after these days, you just come home. So I'd work until it like got dark. And so like you'd work like a 10-hour shift or 12-hour shift. Then you sit in the car and you're just covered in brick dust, and you're tired. Like your hands are still vibrating. They still vibrate. It's this amazing thing because you're using a jackhammer. Now there's different types of jackhammers, but this particular time I was using like the real air jackhammers, which, connects this 2-inch wide hose 100 feet from this huge compressor. And these are the very powerful jackhammers, right? As opposed to electric. I've used those as well, and those are much easier on you. But it's just crazy. And you're so tired, and your hands are just like vibrating. They feel like they're vibrating for like all night. And you just, you come home and you're tired and you don't even want to take a shower. You're so bloody tired. And you go take a shower anyways. And then you lay down, you kind of sit on the couch for a little while, and you go to sleep, and then you go do it again, So here's the thing. Like, I only did that part of my life. And all I can say is like, if you've never done it before, it's really hard. So you got to appreciate like people in construction and a lot of jobs, right? That, even just like being a waiter or waitress, like up on your feet for 10 hours a day, walking around, that gets really hard to do in your 40s. It gets really hard. So I just don't think like a lot of people, it depends where you come from. Maybe you don't appreciate it. So on one side, you have this issue where you have people that like, maybe didn't work at all, so they don't understand what the cost is for things. Like, hey, you're looking at a person that spent all week, they worked like, and they don't work 5 days a week, they work like 6 days a week. Like, I go down here, the place near where I live, and it's like one of these shipyards, and it's like, yeah, you go there on a Sunday, there's guys coming in, and they're pulling 10-hour shifts, probably 6 days a week, and it's like, welding, pipe fitting, all that stuff. I mean, you're so freaking tired. You just, so the problem that you have is like with, politics and stuff is people don't, maybe they just don't have this experience and appreciate it. And, it really helps to understand, because you could understand like the different sides of it. Like, hey, people are working really hard. It's really hard. People are tired. You should appreciate that. The other side of the coin is like, if you were never worked a day in your life, okay, well, yeah, just appreciate it, right? So yeah, so that's kind of interesting. I don't know what the point was. There really wasn't a point in this whole thing. I just want to tell some old stories about when I used to like do manual labor, which was kind of fun because I kind of miss that. You know, I kind of miss that. I do a lot of thinking now, and sometimes I just tired of thinking. Well, so that's it for this episode. I've found another lava pit, so crapatola. All right, later, out.